Alberta may be calling, but a local campaign is asking you not to pick up.
More than 87,000 people moved to Alberta in search of a more affordable life.
2,500 more people moved to Alberta.
Cost of living is their top concern.
As some of you may already know, this is my second time moving back to Calgary, so this time I wanted to calculate all the associated costs related to moving and making an out-of-province move altogether. I would have to say that now, having made this move a few times in my life, I have a rough estimate of how much it costs me each time to make a move, but even I'm curious to know what that full breakdown looks like. Also, I had a few people reach out, and even clients of mine, asking me how much should they expect when making the move out to Calgary. Like, how much does it cost to ship out your furniture, ship out your vehicle, or even just switching your driver's license? What does that look like? So I figured making this video will assist those who are thinking about making a move over to Calgary by assisting them by helping them budget, seeing how much it costs to move over here, and using a single reference as a single adult. I will also go through some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, the mistakes I've done, so that way you can not make those same mistakes that I did when I first moved over here. The truth is, guys, moving is stressful, time consuming, even annoying, and my goal is to just remove as much of that friction as much as possible, considering I've now done this, let's just say, too many times in my life. Before we get into it, I would appreciate if you guys could do me a quick favor. I'm not sure if you guys know, but making a video probably takes me about 10 to 15 hours from like editing, planning, scripting, thumbnails. But I would appreciate if you guys could do me a quick favor, smash the like button, ring that notification bell, follow me on Instagram if you haven't done so already. And now let's get into the full breakdown. Let's start things off with moving my belongings, which is my furniture and my car vehicle, which were the two big things. So one of the big pain points that I think a lot of people have is, how the F am I going to move all my belongings over to Calgary? And unlike the first time around when I first made a move, I basically had no furniture the first time around because I was living in a single bedroom. But this time around, I actually had a decent amount of furniture that I wanted to bring over, and I had no idea how I was going to do this. So I looked into U-Haul shipping containers, and no, I'm not even sponsored by U-Haul, but I did really like their services, so that's why I'm pitching it. And to my surprise, a single shipping container, which is quite massive actually, costed me after taxes $1,700, which was not too bad. Although I did have a lot of questions of like how that process would look like will they drop the container off to the exact site? How long would it take to ship it from here to over to Calgary? But I would say their customer service was quite nice overall. Now, having done it, I would say that the process is pretty straightforward. I actually ended up even hiring movers because this was an add-on feature after you look into the containers. So it costed me about $300 per way for movers, so $600 to budget. So if you factor in the $1,700 for the container itself and then the movers, it costed me $2,300 for moving my furniture. For my actual vehicle, I decided to have it shipped out using an auto transport company that I was invoiced $1,600. So how this process works is more simple than you think. You would call the company and share with them the make and model of your vehicle and set a time you wish for your vehicle to arrive at your destination city. I found the most cost-effective approach was to ship the vehicle terminal to terminal. So you would drop off the car off 2 weeks in advance at the terminal location in your city, where they would inspect the car, take photos, and then they would upload your car along with the other vehicles that are also being shipped out. I would also advise when searching for an auto transport company to get multiple quotes, like get 2 to 3 quotes from different companies. So then that way you can cross compare them, see which one is most cost effective, and also make sure to read their Google reviews. You can see which has most positive feedback, and this ultimately can save you hundreds of dollars and ultimately even a potentially smashed car, because the only thing that needs smashing is the like button. Yeah, that was a bad joke. I'm sure if you've been following, this time around moving to Calgary, I've been very, very fortunate and blessed to have bought in a place instead of renting, but I do want to explain the costs related. I'll touch on buying first because before I was a realtor or even a homeowner, I had this perception that working with a agent or realtor would cost me money. And this is actually not true. 99% of the times when you are working with a buyer agent, the commission actually comes from the seller portion, which means just generally speaking, you don't pay anything to work with the realtor itself. This is one of the misconceptions that many people have, because when you sign a buyer contract with your realtor, the text would read technically you as the buyer would pay for the commission, but underneath this text, it would state that you allow the agent to ask the sellers to compensate this amount, which again, 99% of the time the sellers do. However, I do like to make this transparent with anyone that I potentially work with. I did, however, have to pay for closing costs, which I will factor into my budget. So that looks like things like lawyer fees, document reviews, home inspection, and that costed me approximately $3,000. Now, if you're planning to rent, no issues at all. The average rent in Calgary for a 1-bedroom is going just under $1,600 and just under $2,000 for a 2-bedroom. And we are seeing a slight drop in rent prices year over year, negative 7.5%, according to rental.ca. I feel one of the other misconceptions that a lot of people have, especially moving from Ontario or BC out to Alberta in Calgary, is that you think you need a realtor to find a rental out in Calgary, and you don't. People here generally just do it themselves, and let me explain. In Calgary, I find people here often just use rentfaster.ca or even Facebook Market to find their rentals. Like, from being here, I find there seems to be just more apartment buildings, like tenants only in general, in comparison to Toronto, where there's more condos with landlords looking to lease out their units to others, versus over here, there's an actual apartment building with a leasing office within. In other words, I think it's safe to say that in general, most people here don't use realtors to find rental properties, because you can just skip that process by doing it yourself, looking at the Facebook Markets of the world, the Rent Faster of the world. And in my opinion, I think it's better because you get to skip that median person altogether. Once you move, you'll need to switch over your car insurance, which may be cheaper or more expensive depending on your previous location. What you need to do is call your auto insurance provider to let them know your new location, or if you're coming from a public auto insurance province, you'll need to find a private insurance company to work with. You also have to apply for a new Alberta health card, which is free but requires documents providing your residency. And then lastly, switching your driver's license and vehicle registration comes with a fee. And if your car needs an out-of-province inspection, that's another expense to budget for. The cost associated to transferring your documents isn't the worst. For example, transferring your out-of-province license to Alberta is approximately $50 or less, or registering your vehicle on an annual basis is $100. Simply put, all you have to do is bring all the right documents to a Alberta registry agent, and you can get it all done. So transferring your license, registering your car, and even converting your health card all in one go. And I find the process a lot less stressful here in comparison to Ontario, at least. I personally found transferring my documents from Ontario to Alberta a lot less stressful, and let me explain how much easier it is. So if you're in Ontario, you're probably familiar with Service Ontario. And in Service Ontario, you know that if it opens at 7:30 a.m., you probably have to get there at 7 a.m. to even have a chance to go there and make it on time for work at 9 a.m. So but then you get there and then you see like 20 other people and you're like what's going on? Whereas like out in Alberta, I found this process almost too easy. Like, you actually have a buffer to make an error, forget potential documents, go home and come back, and actually they'll save your spot. Whereas like Ontario, it's like good luck, because if you're missing any piece of documents, you can just assume you're probably not going to go back there the same day. You're probably going to go back the next day or the day after, or if it's too busy, probably the following week. Long story short, before you head over to these registry, actually go on the website, go down to that document section, and actually read every single piece of item that you need to bring. If anything, more is better, so like bring additional documents, so then that way you don't have to go back and forth between your house and to the registry. And sure, there's a little bit more flexibility out in Alberta, but just in general, do it right the first time. That's my tip. Beyond the obvious expenses that I've discussed so far, there are hidden costs that catches people off guard, including myself. Things like utility setup, home insurance, maybe property taxes if you're buying, winter tires for Calgary, very important, or just furnishing your place in general. Costs that people sometimes forget when moving to a new city. My advice when getting your vehicle inspected is to actually go to your dealership. I sort of learned this the hard way because I kind of cheat myself out because I went to, I'll actually call them out just because they weren't the best customer service. I went to a Canadian Tire in like Signal Hill, and these guys were the worst. This was back in like 2020. So like they basically came back and said my car needed all my rotors replaced and costed me like $1,200. I didn't believe them. So what I did was I got a second opinion. I had to pay an additional $250 for a re-inspection at the dealership. But overall, what the new place told me was there was no issue with my rotors, and that saved me basically $1,000 right there. Another expected cost would be investing into new winter tires out in Calgary. And I say this for a safety measure because driving out here, like I lived in Winnipeg and Toronto, and I would say driving here is a little bit scary because there are hills in this city. So if you don't have proper winter tires during the winter months, it can be quite dangerous given that when you mix it with Calgary's fluctuation of temperature with the ice and the snow, it can be very, very scary driving. And so, but that can cost you approximately like $1,000. Lastly, I would have to say that when you're moving to a new place, I find that you naturally would buy new furniture for the home. And that usually costs me anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000. Like, trust me, as a person who likes to save money, I like to sell my old furniture, but I find that you only recoup about 50% of the original purchase price. But yeah, anywhere between that $3,000 to $5,000 is like what I typically find myself spending on new furniture. And obviously there's like ways of like saving, like you can go on Facebook Market or getting a better deal out of it. But that's kind of like what I've spent at least from moving. So there you guys have it. That is how much money I spent moving back to Calgary. And I will summarize it all up nicely for you all. For moving my belongings of shipping containers and auto transport gave me a total of $3,900. For finding a place to live, I won't include the down payment, but for closing costs to be approximately $3,000. Switching insurance, driver's license, vehicle registration, vehicle inspection to be approximately $700. Hidden and unexpected costs of things like winter tires, buying new furniture to be approximately $4,000 to $6,000, which give me a grand total range of $11,600 to $13,600. This is the estimated price range of myself moving to Calgary this time around, which now reflecting back does align with what I was calculating on a budget. I always notice every time I have made the move, whether that's from Winnipeg to Toronto or Toronto to Calgary or vice versa, costing about $10,000. So for simplicity, if you want a range, I would say it's about $10,000 at least for a single person to move. And that's with doing things like selling things off. I will say that there are certainly ways you can save money when moving to Calgary. Like for example, instead of looking into a auto transport company, you can do what I did the first time around, which is driving my vehicle literally from Toronto to Calgary. But I personally wouldn't do that again because one, there's just wear and tear with your vehicle. You have to spend hotel nights unless you're planning to do it all in one go, which I don't recommend just from safety. And then in general, all the food that you're gonna be consuming also like meals along the way. So unless you have the time or you're closer, like from Vancouver to Calgary, do what makes sense for you. But I'm just giving you the options that made the most sense for me at this time. So anyhow, with that said guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of how much money I spent moving to Calgary. And if you have any video ideas about Calgary in general, let me know in the comment section down below. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, or follow me on Instagram if you haven't done so already. And I guess I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.